According to the Department of Justice, over 250,000 hate crimes occur each year. Profiling of people from different races excites a range of positions from moderate to extreme. I will now present the pros and the cons and all the opinions that people have on it. Three main issues that surround the controversy of racial profiling are whether or not racial profiling is effective, way to prevent terrorist attacks, and the second issue is whether or not racial profiling will affect crime rate. The third issue is whether or not it is consistent with individual rights. Now that I presented the pros, now that I presented the inherent issues, I will start with the pros and end with the cons. Racial profiling is an effective way to prevent attacks. Supporters of this activity find it fair to subject a person to an investigation based on ethnic background to intercept possible terrorist attacks. Law enforcement has changed to more than one tactic of profiling. Racial profiling has changed from tactic of profiling. Racial profiling has changed from a person suspected of committing a crime on ethnicity or race to law enforcers investigating or questioning an individual of Arab descent who may be suspected of terrorism. George W. Bush put his input on this. George says, "Federal law enforcement personnel must use every legitimate tool to prevent future attacks, protect our nation's borders, and deter those who would cause devastating harm to our nation and its people." Racial profiling is a tool to uphold law and decrease crime rate. Supporters of this action believe identifying suspicious-looking people, determine attackers, potential criminals, will be easily identified and profiling is used as long as it's done the right way. Police officers have to be good about identifying some people that could do harm. They say that what they do is not racial profiling, but are using data and actionable intelligence, which include ethnic background. There's a tech company called Nextdoor that is used for profiling purposes. As of last month, Nextdoor is testing a system in which users reporting suspicious activities are asked to describe suspects' clothing from head to toe, rather than relying on racial descriptions. Racial profiling is consistent with individual rights. Law enforcement is doing their job. Profiling has been proven to be an effective tactic in the fight against crime. Profiling, they say, allows law enforcement officials to focus their attention on those thought most likely to commit crimes. Citizen rights violated. If this sometimes results in law-abiding citizens, people being inconvenienced with police aggressively enforce the laws and investigate crimes, this should not cause those stopped and searched to believe that their rights were violated. I presented the pros, I will now present the cons. People say that racial profiling is not an effective way to prevent attacks. Terrorists don't fit a good profile. Many terrorism suspects come from within the U.S. and European Union countries. Profiling does not help against individuals with names and ethnic backgrounds like Richard Ride, Jose Padilla, David Headley, and Michael Fenton. Terrorists can easily trick profiling systems. And even worse, profiling creates two paths through security, one with less scrutiny and one with more. Once you do that, you invite the terrorists to take a path with less scrutiny. Terrorists could act differently to avoid profiling. It's not true that all terrorists are Muslims. Any such measure would only alienate people, also be ineffective in stopping terrorists. People say that it does not decrease the crime rate. A case in St. Louis happens to be one of these examples. November 2014, a St. Louis grand jury declined to indict Darren Wilson, the officer who had shot and killed unarmed teenager Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. In response to the decision not to indict, organizers held massive protests in major cities. In New York, thousands of protesters marched across the Brooklyn Bridge, while others blocked portions of West Side Highway, as well as the Lincoln and Holland tunnels. Studies show crime rate not changing, and the minority neighborhoods that have been subject higher to levels of policing, by which we mean surveillance, quality of life, arrest, and all the other aspects of broken windows, policing major crime did decrease. Police stop more people.
I have to stop you there, Alex. Sorry. Good job. Thank you. Questions? What is said about racial profiling as like a support of like white privilege? Is there anything in noting that because someone is white or doesn't have an ethnic background that they would not be seen as a potential terrorist? Do you find anything information about that?
Well, I guess it's more about like what people wear. That's what they've been saying, because they've been kind of, I guess, criticizing people on what they wear to stop them more than somebody that was white, apparently.
How can something like this be used as like a get out of jail free card, I guess you could say? Like how can it like cripple like the system because they say they were racially profiling when they weren't?
Well, I guess more people are trying to trick the systems. Like, they're trying to disguise themselves and not make them look like they can do more harm, because they're trying to change the ways at airports and try to get by law enforcement, security, all that.
All right.